Teams from South Florida on the pro-life side advocating the pro-choice stance of a women's right to choose. We welcome from Miami-Dade College, Jimena Quadra and Andrew Cassidy. Arguing for the anti-abortion laws, we have from the University of Miami, Christian Benavides and Catherine Tracy. Before we begin the debate, let's send it over to our We the Students correspondent, Camille Brown, with some background information on this issue. Camille?
Thanks, Kate. In the nearly 40 years since the landmark Roe v. Wade Supreme Court decision, many legal challenges have been waged against the ruling. But 2010 stood out as in particular. The Tea Party waves of the November 2010 election swept in with them the highest number of abortion-limiting legislation in a single period since a 1973 court case. This political advocacy has stood in stark contrast to the promises many of the newly minted officials made to decrease the size of government. The 2012 presidential elections are almost a year away, and with candidates like Rick Perry mandating for HPV vaccinations for young teens while presenting a platform against choice, it's hard to know where the truth lies. We went to you, the students on campus, to get your take on abortion.
Born unwanted. Everyone should have the option to abort their child if they think that its life is not going to be sufficiently cared for, they can't support it, or if it was a case of rape, the victim should definitely be able to abort their child.
For abortion, I think women should have the right to choose what they want with their body.
As you can see, views strongly differ on this versus Roe versus Wade's court decision. Right now at WeTheStudents.tv, on Twitter at WeTheStudents.um, and on Facebook at WeTheStudents, you can tell us your views. We'll be back later with Camille to ask more questions. Now let's hear from our debaters. Miami-Dade College, you have 2 minutes for an opening statement.
Good evening, everyone. I would like to first off thank you all for having us here. And with that said, I would like to start with the opening statement that pro-choice is for the woman's voice. These women, they fought for these rights decades ago, and there's no right to impose something that doesn't go with what they believe when it comes to their body and stuff. And it's just no idealistic views should take influence on this. And that actually reminds me of a documentary I was watching today, and it was called Lake of Fire. And this documentary, it shows back to 1963 how women weren't even allowed to take birth control because it was seen as something it was ridiculous to think of that, because women were dying, and it just caused women to die because of they were doing self-induced abortions, and they're leading into back alley abortions. So in the past 2 decades, before abortion was legal in the US, it was estimated nearly 1 million women sought to illegal abortions according to religious tolerance. This is just to give you an idea of how what was going on and everything, and just to make it clear that legalizing abortion won't stop them. It's still going to happen no matter what. With this said, motherhood should not be forced upon you. Even President Obama said it in one of his campaigns on March 29, 2008. He said, "I have 2 daughters. I'm going to teach them first about values and morals. But if they make a mistake, I don't want them to be punished with a baby." Which leads me on to the point how there's plenty of women that they get raped and abused and because of incest and all this stuff, and there's other medical factors that contribute to this. So, yeah.
Thank you very much. Now the University of Miami, you have 2 minutes for your opening statement.
To begin with, 95% of abortions are done as means of birth control. 1% of fetal abnormalities, 3% due to mother's health problems, and only 1% is due to rape or incest. This means that most of these people are using abortions as a form of birth control. Other forms of birth control are readily available. Thus, abortion shouldn't be a form of birth control. The societal contributions of a potential valuable human being are totally wiped out through this. Women who have abortions often suffer major psychological damage from experience, along in some cases the father of the child as well.
Who are we to really know when life begins? but what if it were to begin at conception? So the issue is not just about women's rights. It's also about, there's the political way of looking at it, there's the philosophical way of looking at it. Politically, about $360 million is funded by the government to go to Planned Parenthood. And that's $360 million of taxpayers' money that could go somewhere else. So if we look at it from a political standpoint, you would have to also address that. It's not just about if a woman has the right to choose, because why should people who disagree with the ideas of abortion that would never get abortion are still forced to fund something they completely don't agree with? And the fact that it may be illegal, or if it were to be illegal, what would happen is that, yes, people might still break the rules, but that's just like anything else being illegal. For example, drugs. Like, people will still do them, but that doesn't mean it should be legalized.
Thank you, and now let's move on to our first and perhaps our most pertinent question of the night. Who has the authority to decide to whether or not keep a fetus full term? Miami-Dade, you have 2 minutes to respond.
I think it's kind of obvious here that the real contention that we're talking about, the real topic, is about women's rights. We're talking about a pregnancy. This is a process that a woman engages in after sexual intercourse. The notion of life wasn't even discussed by our opposition. They were talking about life as a financial component. They're talking about your tax money as far as whether or not someone should be, whether or not a pregnancy should be terminated. So if the opposition is discussing abortion as a monetary means, solely as a monetary means, how is it that we can look at it, from this perspective? We're looking at it from a human perspective, looking at it from a humanistic approach where we're sympathizing with women. We want them to have the choice. We don't want this to be the only.
What about sympathizing for the unborn child?
Well, technically, we're not actually saying that it's an unborn child. We're saying that this is terminating a pregnancy. As I said, in your opening statement, you didn't actually clarify that pregnancy is anything other than a monetary upset for the American taxpayer.
Well, we also have to look at the overall idea of what abortion is to our society. If it's legal, then it includes the taxpayer. It includes all the monetary issues as well. So,
and also we did mention that the societal contributions of a potential human life are being totally wiped out through abortion. So we did mention that.
And
This debate is surely off to a fiery start. We invite you to stay tuned. There's more We the Students after the break.